Boxing may look like a fun sport to fans and spectators alike, but only the ones who do box competitively know the toll it takes on you, mentally and physically. Let's take a look at why boxing might possibly be one of the most fatal sports known to mankind, but make sure you stick to the end of the video. So let's begin, shall we? First, let's look into the art of boxing. To start off, let's introduce the noobs to the art of boxing, one of the most important striking arts. And no, this isn't going to just be some pop-fit montage where people obsessively flex their jump rope skills or their ability to embarrassingly annihilate a boxing bag while the eye of the tiger plays in the background. There's a method to this madness, or more specifically, a science. In layman's terms, this is a combat sport where two people wearing gloves and mouth guards aim and throw punches at each other with gloved fists for a predetermined amount of time, known as a round, that lasts for around 1 to 3 minutes, taking place inside a boxing ring. Amateur boxing is competed at various levels and organizations, most notably the Commonwealth Games, the Olympics, and with their own world championships. There are different rule sets for different organizations and levels. For instance, a winner can be resolved before the completion of the rounds when a referee deems an opponent incapable of continuing, disqualification of an opponent, or resignation of an opponent. When the fight reaches the end of its final round with both opponents still standing, the judges' scorecards determine the victor. In case both fighters gain equal scores from the judges, then professional bouts are considered a draw. In Olympic boxing, because a winner must be declared, judges award the contest to one fighter on technical criteria. Interestingly, the earliest evidence of any fist-fighting sporting contest date back to the ancient Near East, or the modern-day Middle East, in the 3rd and 2nd millennia. The earliest evidence of boxing rules are traced back to ancient Greece, where boxing was officially established as an Olympic sport in 688 BC. It then evolved into a prize-fighting system from the 16th to 18th centuries, mostly in Great Britain, with modern boxing becoming one of the most watched sports in recent human history, especially in the last 4 to 5 decades. Next, amateur boxing versus professional boxing. What's the difference? When it comes to competitive boxing, there are two major categories, amateur boxing and professional boxing. But what could be the differences between the two? Well, let us tell you that there are a bunch of them. For starters, there are differences in rule sets as well as the ability and experience of the boxer. For instance, in professional boxing, the main aim is to earn more money by landing a money shot, which quite literally knocks their opponent out, effectively ending the fight. This is where the experience and skill of boxers are tested. Whereas in amateur boxing, the boxer aims at bagging up as many points as possible, which is why amateur boxers are expected to throw strikes in volume that are quick and clean. They don't get scored for landing big knockout shots. This is why the boxers are asked to focus more on how they will land straighter shots and develop what is called the outfighter style, which focuses on wearing the opponent down with a steady and constant offense. This can sometimes be more dangerous than its pro alternative. For professional boxing, they have a 10-point scoring system for each round you win. You essentially win by the fighter knocking out your opponent, focusing on more punching heavy style at a close range. And as for scoring and the relative ring size, for amateur boxers, their ring is to be 16 by 16 feet at a minimum and 20 by 20 feet at a maximum. For the fighter to score points, he or she must contact the front or side of the opponent's head or body with the white area of the glove. Whereas in pro boxing, the size of the ring can differentiate, and the boxer has the freedom to hit their opponent above the belt, and the hit must land on the front or side of the head or body. Now let's look at the downsides to boxing: brain health, diseases, and everything else. There's no doubt about the fact that boxing has numerous benefits: mental, helping you strengthen the mind and helping with the release and increase of hormones like dopamine and testosterone; physiological, like the link that improves your mind-body coordination; physical, knowing how to fight and keeping you in peak athletic condition. There are still detrimental downsides to this blood sport. For instance, a study carried out at Cardiff University linked amateur boxing with an increased risk of cognitive impairment or dysfunction, which may cause an increased exposure to cognitive diseases like Alzheimer's and dementia. The research team found that men who regularly boxed in their youth were 2 times more likely to develop an Alzheimer's-like disorder in comparison to those who had not boxed. It was also linked to an earlier induction to dementia by 5 years in advance, compromising on their youth. These findings suggest and conclude that the rule set should induce a ban on blows to specific areas to the head in the amateur sport. The study, which is the first of many, researches long-term effects of amateur boxing on the brain and is published in the Clinical Journal of Sport Medicine. The researchers say it adds to the piling evidence of links between dementia and the sport and the ongoing discourse around measures of safety. According to a collective summary of numerous credible studies over the decade, boxers are shown to be at significant risk for injuries that acutely affect the head, heart, and body of the boxer. Other lasting subacute effects of being constantly punched in the head hard include symptoms such as headaches, impaired hearing, nausea, body language dysfunction, and memory loss, with an overall decrease in the quality of brain function. The cognitive drawbacks of blunt craniocerebral trauma last way longer than the symptoms persist in the individual's projected perception. Nearly 10 to 20% of boxers develop persistent neuropsychiatric conditions. But could a sport so glorious really be that brutal? Let's take a look. Next, a deeper dive into the study and the research it presents. The lead researcher, author, Professor Peter Elwood, honorary professor at Cardiff University School of Medicine, said, "Professional boxing is known to cause chronic traumatic brain injury, but there has been little to no long-term research on this issue in amateur boxing." He therefore explains how their study presents some of the most pristinely researched evidence suggesting that amateur boxing is linked with clinically documented long-term brain injuries manifesting as early onsets of Alzheimer's-like dysfunctions. Over the years, the introduction of increasingly tight controls in the amateur sport, with shorter bouts and mandatory headgear, means that the chances of serious brain injury are much reduced. There is still a true long-term impact of boxing. Banning blows to the head would seem to be an acceptable preventive measure, as this need not reduce the competitive aspect of the sport, but would preserve its undoubted considerable physical and social benefits. The research used the CARE Philly cohort study as their baseline reference to gather evidence on indicators of cognitive impairment and dementia. The study includes a representative sample of 2,500 male residents in CARE Philly, South Wales, who were aged around 45 to 59 years when inducted into the study in 1979. Subjects were closely researched for 35 years, and on every 5-year interval, their behavior, health, and activities, the diseases they experienced, and their general lifestyle and health were documented via interviews, clinical examinations, and inspection of their GP and hospital records, along with regular exams of cognitive function. At the end of the study in 2014, clear evidence of dementia was reported from medical records collectively. So what were the results of the study? This study reveals that out of a sample of 1,123 of men, 73 said they had seriously boxed when they were in their youth, and when they hit the ages of 75 to 89 years, a third of those who boxed projected evidence of cognitive dysfunction in comparison to about a fifth of the men who had not boxed. Empirically, this presents a crystal clear twofold decrease in cognitive ability, shooting to almost threefold for Alzheimer's-like damage. Furthermore, the onset of dementia was nearly 5 years faster in the men who had boxed compared to those who had not, the study found. And while Professor Elwood said that while a sample of 73 is a conservative number to study and generalize, long-term examination of amateur boxers is rare as it is, so it provides concrete evidence nonetheless, especially in the ongoing discourse around head injury in this combat sport. Millions of people are affected by dementia, and the links between this devastating disease and certain types of contact sport are only now starting to come to light, said Professor Elwood. Further research in this area is vital so that we can bring in simple measures now to protect the health of generations to come. And this is rapidly changing the game, especially when it comes to developing and tailoring their training curriculums and ethics to be more longevity-oriented rather than training fighters to be meatheads. Fighters now approach training with more technique and spar less to preserve their body and mind for the real thing, the ring. And that's all for today, folks. We'll see you in the next video. Until then, ciao!